The mahogany doors of the Harrison estate swung open, and Marcus Harrison stood on the marble steps wearing clothes that looked like they'd been pulled from a dumpster. His once-tailored suit was replaced with a torn jacket, stained jeans, and boots held together with duct tape. The man worth $3 billion looked like he hadn't eaten in days. Before you judge what happens next, hit that subscribe button because this story will make you question everyone you call family. Inside that mansion, his mother, his brother, his fiancé, and cousins he'd supported for years were about to reveal who they truly were. And by the end of the day, Marcus would make sure they'd regret every word, every laugh, and every moment they chose cruelty over loyalty. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about watching people destroy themselves with their own greed. Marcus had built an empire from nothing, turned a simple coding idea into a $3 billion technology company, and now he stood at his own doorstep looking like a stranger. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd given these people everything: homes, cars, careers, respect, and now he was about to find out what they were really made of. The test had begun the moment he knocked on that door, and what happened in the next few hours would change everything forever. Marcus had disappeared 6 months ago without a word to anyone except his lawyer. The tech empire he built from his college dorm room, Harrison Digital Solutions, was left in the hands of his younger brother David and his CFO, who happened to be his fiancée Vanessa. He told them he needed time away, that the pressure was crushing him, that he'd be back when his head was clear. But he didn't tell them he was testing them. He didn't tell them that his lawyers had been watching every transaction, every meeting, every decision made in his absence like hawks circling prey. He'd spent those 6 months in a small cabin upstate, living simply, watching his company's reports, watching his bank statements, watching the people he loved carve up his life like vultures on a carcass. He saw David's new Lamborghini purchase with company funds labeled as a business expense. He saw Vanessa's sudden investment in a competing startup using insider information from his own company. He saw his mother's shopping sprees in Paris and Milan charged directly to his personal account without a single phone call asking if he was okay. He watched his cousin Jerome move into the penthouse Marcus owned downtown and start throwing parties every weekend. Now he was back, dressed like a man who'd lost everything, ready to see if anyone would choose him over his money. The housemaid Gloria saw him first through the decorative glass panels beside the door, and her eyes went wide with recognition, before quickly shifting to something that looked like disgust. She'd worked for the Harrison family for 15 years, and Marcus had always treated her with respect, always remembered her birthday, even paid for her daughter's college tuition when she couldn't afford it. But now, looking at his torn clothes and dirty appearance, she took 3 steps back and called out loudly enough for everyone inside the grand foyer to hear. "Mrs. Harrison, there's a homeless man at the door claiming to know the family." Her voice carried that sharp edge of judgment that people reserve for those they consider beneath them. Marcus said nothing, just stood there with his hands in his pockets, waiting. He could hear movement inside. Footsteps on marble floors, voices raised in confusion and annoyance. His mother appeared first, Eleanor Harrison, 62 years old, draped in a designer dress that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her face was pulled tight from her latest cosmetic procedure, and her fingers sparkled with diamonds Marcus had bought her last Christmas. She looked at him through the glass, and her expression went from confusion to horror to cold dismissal in less than 5 seconds. Eleanor opened the door just wide enough to speak through, but not wide enough to suggest he was welcome inside her home. "Can I help you?" she asked in that tone wealthy people use when they are trying to hurry undesirable people along. Marcus almost smiled. His own mother didn't recognize him, or maybe she did and chose not to. He decided to push further. "Mom, it's me. It's Marcus." His voice was hoarse from deliberately not using it much over the past weeks, adding to his homeless appearance. Eleanor's eyes narrowed, and she looked him up and down with an expression that made his stomach turn. "I don't know what kind of scam you're trying to pull, but my son is a successful businessman who would never let himself look like this." She said the last word with such venom that Marcus felt it like a physical blow. Behind her, more family members were gathering, drawn by the commotion. David appeared, his younger brother by 3 years, wearing a custom suit that Marcus recognized as being from the company's executive clothing allowance. Vanessa stood beside him, her hand possessively on David's arm, her engagement ring, the one Marcus had given her, catching the light. The ring had cost him $200,000 and represented a future he thought they'd build together. "What's going on here?" David demanded, stepping forward with the confidence of a man who'd been running a billion-dollar company for 6 months. He looked at Marcus, and there was not even a flicker of recognition, just contempt. "Eleanor, why are you entertaining this? Call security." Marcus watched his brother's face, searching for any sign that David knew who he was and was playing along. But there was nothing, just genuine disgust. Vanessa leaned closer, squinting at Marcus, and for a moment he thought she'd figured it out. But then she wrinkled her nose and turned away. "He smells like he's been living on the streets. This is embarrassing. We have the charity gala tonight, and if anyone sees this—" She didn't finish the sentence. The charity gala. The one Marcus had founded 5 years ago to help homeless youth get job training and housing. The irony was so thick Marcus could taste it. His cousin Jerome pushed through the crowd, already pulling out his phone. "You'll want me to call the cops? I'm not about to let some random dude harass the family." Marcus finally spoke up, his voice stronger now. "I'm not random. I'm Marcus Harrison. This is my house. You're living in my house, Jerome." The crowd went silent for exactly 2 seconds before they burst into laughter. If you think this is brutal, wait until you see what Marcus does next. Make sure you're subscribed with notifications on, because next chapter will blow your mind. Don't miss what happens when Marcus's fiancée makes the ultimate betrayal. Subscribe now and hit that notification bell. This story gets even more intense. The laughter cut through Marcus like broken glass, each cruel sound coming from people who'd built their entire lives on his generosity. Jerome doubled over, slapping his knee like Marcus had just told the funniest joke he'd ever heard. This broke fool really thinks he's Marcus Harrison. Man, you must be on something strong. Eleanor didn't laugh, but her lips curled into a disgusted sneer as she crossed her arms over her chest. This is what happens when you people get desperate. You show up at successful families' homes with ridiculous stories hoping for a handout. You people. His own mother had just called him you people. Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. Not anger exactly, but a kind of clarity he'd never experienced before. He'd suspected they might not recognize him at first, might be confused by his appearance. But he never imagined they'd be cool. He never imagined his own mother would look at him like he was garbage on her expensive shoes. David stepped forward, his face twisted with irritation, and Marcus noticed something he hadn't before. His brother was wearing his watch, the limited edition Patek Philippe that Marcus had inherited from their father. The watch that was supposed to stay in the family, that meant something beyond its $200,000 price tag. Vanessa's voice sliced through the tension with surgical precision, cold and sharp as a blade. "You know what? This is actually sad. Some mentally ill homeless man probably saw Marcus's picture in Forbes or Bloomberg, and now has convinced himself it's actually him." She turned to David, touching his arm with practiced intimacy that made Marcus's jaw clench. "Baby, we should call someone from social services or something. He clearly needs help." "Baby." She'd called David baby. Marcus watched his brother's hand cover haze, watched the way they stood together like a unit, like a couple, and suddenly 6 months of financial reports and suspicious transactions made perfect sense. The late-night meetings David and Vanessa had claimed were about quarterly projections. The joint investment account they'd opened that his lawyers had flagged as unusual. The apartment lease in downtown Atlanta with both their names on it. Marcus had seen the evidence, but some part of him hadn't wanted to believe it. Now, watching them together, watching Vanessa wear his ring while touching his brother like she had every right to, the truth was unavoidable. They weren't just stealing his company. They'd stolen each other. "How long?" Marcus asked quietly, his eyes locked on Vanessa. "How long have you two been together?" The question hung in the air, and for a brief moment Vanessa's confident mask slipped. Her eyes widened slightly, and she pulled her hand away from David like she'd been boned. But she recovered quickly, too quickly, and that told Marcus everything he needed to know. "I don't know what you're talking about, and I don't have to explain anything to some stranger on the doorstep." David moved protectively in front of her, chest puffed out, playing the hero. "Oh, I don't know what your problem is, man, but you need to leave before this gets ugly. My brother Marcus is out of the country on business, and when he gets back, I'm sure he won't appreciate some con artist using his name." Out of the country on business. That was the story they'd been telling people. Marcus wondered how many other lies they constructed in his absence, how many stories they crafted to explain why the billionaire founder of Harrison Digital Solutions had vanished without a trace. His mother Eleanor pulled out her phone, fingers moving quickly across the screen. "I'm calling the police. This has gone on long enough. We've tried to be patient, but you're clearly unstable, and I won't have you harassing my family." My family. As if Marcus wasn't her son, as if she hadn't given birth to him 35 years ago, as if he hadn't paid for every luxury she'd enjoyed for the past decade. Marcus reached into his torn jacket pocket and pulled out his phone, the one thing he'd kept from his old life, though he'd removed the expensive case and let it get scratched and dainty. "Before you do that, Mom, maybe you should check your bank account. Specifically, the one I opened for you at First National. The one with the monthly deposits of $50,000. Eleanor froze, her finger hovering over her phone screen. "What did you just say?" Her voice had changed, uncertainty creeping in around the edges. Marcus smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. It was a smile of a man who'd finally seen the truth and was ready to act on it. "Check it. Check the account. You'll notice the deposit stopped exactly 1 week ago. Same with David's corporate account, Vanessa's discretionary fund, Jerome's penthouse rent payment, and the credit cards I gave to everyone standing in this foyer." He let that sink in, watched the color drain from several faces at once. "I stopped them all from the cabin upstate where I've been living for 6 months, watching you people spend my money like it was water while not one of you, not one, bothered to call and ask if I was okay." The silence now was different, heavy with dawning realization and the first traces of fear. Jerome was the first to break, pulling out his own phone with shaking hands, his earlier bravado completely gone. Nah, this is some kind of mistake. My account was fine last week. I just paid for—" He stopped mid-sentence, staring at his screen, and Marcus knew exactly what he was seeing. Insufficient funds. David's face had gone pale, his hand already reaching for his own phone. Vanessa's confident posture had crumbled, and she was looking at Marcus now, really looking at him, seeing past the torn clothes and dirty appearance of the man underneath. "Marcus." Her voice was small, uncertain, nothing like the cold dismissal from moments before. "Oh my God, Marcus, is that really?" Eleanor cut her off with a sharp gasp, her phone clattering to the marble floor. "Marcus? Baby, is that you?" Now she called him baby. Now the warmth returned to her voice. But Marcus just stood there watching them all scramble and panic and realize what they'd done. His lawyer had told him this moment would be satisfying, but Marcus felt nothing except a deep, bone-tired sadness. These people had shown him exactly who they were, and he'd never be able to unsee it. David moved toward the door, hand outstretched, his expression shifting rapidly between shock and something that might have been shame. "Wait, Marcus. Man, I didn't know it was you. You look so different. Why didn't you just say something? Why are you dressed like that?" But Marcus was already turning away, walking down the marble steps back toward the street. Behind him, the family erupted into chaos, voices overlapping, some apologetic, some angry, all desperate. But Marcus didn't stop, didn't look back, because the real show was just beginning, and by tomorrow morning every single one of them would understand what it meant to betray Marcus Harrison. What happens next will leave you speechless. Marcus has a plan that will destroy everything they built on his money. Hit that like button and subscribe, because next chapter reveals a revenge that will shake this family to its core. Marcus sat in the back of a black Mercedes S-Class parked 2 blocks from the Harrison estate, watching his family through the tinted windows as they spilled out onto the front lawn like ants from a disturbed hill. He'd changed clothes in the car, one of 3 vehicles his driver had waiting at strategic locations around the neighborhood. Now he wore a charcoal gray Tom Ford suit, his hair freshly cut from this morning's barber appointment, his face clean-shaven, looking every bit the billionaire CEO he actually was. His lawyer, Patricia Chen, sat beside him with a tablet in her lap, her expression neutral but her eyes sharp with the anticipation of someone about to execute a perfect legal strike. "They are panicking," she observed, scrolling through real-time notifications from a bank. David just tried to transfer $2 million from the corporate account. Vanessa attempted to access the emergency fund. Your mother called her personal banker 4 times in the last 3 minutes. Marcus watched Eleanor pace the driveway, phone pressed to her ear, her designer dress fluttering in the evening breeze. 6 months ago he would have felt guilty for causing her distress. Now he felt nothing but a cold determination to see this through to the end. If you're enjoying this revenge story, smash that like button and drop a comment telling us what you would do in Marcus's situation. And stick around because what happens next will have you cheering. Patricia handed Marcus a folder thick with documents, each page representing a piece of the empire he was about to reclaim. Everything's ready. The board meeting is scheduled for 9 a.m. tomorrow at the Harrison Digital Solutions headquarters. I personally contacted every board member, and they've all confirmed attendance. She paused, allowing herself a small smile. I may have mentioned that there would be significant revelations about company mismanagement and fraud. Marcus flipped through the papers, seeing evidence of every transaction David and Vanessa had made in his absence. The unauthorized bonuses they'd given themselves, $300,000 each. The company resources redirected to Vanessa's startup, Next Gen Solutions, which was essentially a clone of Harrison Digital proprietary software. The corporate apartment they'd leased for their secret relationship, charged as a client entertainment expense. The list went on, each item more brazen than the last. What about the IP theft? Marcus asked, his voice calm despite the anger simmering beneath the surface. Patricia's smile widened. We have everything. Email chains, file transfers, meetings with next-gen investors where Vanessa presented your unreleased software as her own innovation. It's textbook corporate espionage and breach of fiduciary duty. She pulled up a video on her tablet. We also have this from last week's executive meeting. Marcus watched the screen as David addressed the board, standing at the head of the conference table in Marcus's chair, speaking with Marcus's authority. The video showed David painting a picture of a company thriving under new leadership, suggesting that Marcus had been the problem all along, that his emotional instability had been holding Harrison Digital Solutions back. My brother built something great, but he didn't have the vision to take it to the next level, David said in the recording, his voice full of false concern and barely concealed ambition. Sometimes founders need to step aside for the good of the company. I think we all know Marcus isn't coming back, and honestly, maybe that's for the best. The board members nodded along, some reluctantly, others enthusiastically. Marcus recognized Paul Hendricks, his father's old friend who'd been on the board since the beginning, looking uncomfortable but silent. He recognized Sandra Williams, who'd voted against every decision Marcus had ever made, now looking at David like he was a second coming. And he recognized James Cooper, his former mentor, who simply looked sad. The video continued with Vanessa presenting financial projections that made the company look more profitable than it actually was, hiding the money she'd been siphoning into her own venture. The restructuring I've implemented has cut costs by 15% while increasing productivity, she lied smoothly, her voice confident and professional. I propose we make David's position as acting CEO permanent and begin the process of legally removing Marcus Harrison from operational control of the company. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow even though he'd read the transcript days ago. Marcus closed the tablet and handed it back to Patricia, his jaw tight. They really thought they could just take everything. It wasn't a question, just a statement of disbelief. Patricia's expression hardened. They thought you were gone for good. They thought you'd either stay away forever or come back broken and willing to accept whatever scraps they threw at you. They underestimated you completely. She pulled out another document, this one with a red tab marking it as urgent. There's something else you need to know. Your mother filed paperwork last week to have you declared legally incompetent due to mental health concerns. She was trying to get conservatorship of your assets. The words took a moment to register, and when they did, Marcus felt the last thread of familial loyalty snap inside his chest. His mother, The woman who'd raised him, who'd told him she was proud of him when he made his first million, who'd cried at his college graduation, had tried to have him declared mentally incompetent so she could control his $3 billion. Does she know that I know? Marcus asked quietly. Patricia shook her head. The filing was sealed and your name was kept confidential in the preliminary hearings. She has a court date next month. She's been seeing a psychiatrist regularly to build a case that she's concerned about your welfare. The manipulation was so calculated, so cold, that Marcus almost admired the audacity of it. His phone buzzed with a text message, and Marcus glanced down to see it was from Vanessa. The message was long, frantic, full of apologies and explanations. Marcus, please call me. I can explain everything. It's not what it looks like with David. I was trying to protect your company. I still love you. Please just talk to me. Marcus deleted it without responding. Another text came through, this time from David. Bro, we need to talk. Come back to the house. Whatever you think is happening, you got it wrong. I've been holding things down for you. Don't do anything stupid. Marcus almost laughed at that. Don't do anything stupid. As if showing up disguised as a homeless man to test his family's loyalty was a stupid move, not stealing from him for 6 months straight. Patricia's phone rang, and she answered it quickly, listening for a moment before her expression shifted to something that might have been satisfaction. Understood. Proceed as planned. She ended the call and turned to Marcus. That was a forensic accountant. They found another $2.3 million missing from various accounts, all traced back to Jerome. He's been running an illegal gambling operation out of your penthouse and using your money to cover his debts. Marcus closed his eyes and took a deep breath. When he opened them again, Patricia saw something in his expression that made her sit back slightly. Tomorrow morning, Marcus said softly, I want every single one of them at that board meeting. I want them to see exactly what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness. The driver started the engine, and Marcus took one last look at the Harrison estate, at the home he'd bought with his first major contract, at a family he'd loved and provided for and trusted. By this time tomorrow, none of them would have access to anything he'd built. Marcus is about to unleash the ultimate revenge at tomorrow's board meeting, but there's one person who might change everything. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because next chapter will reveal a betrayal that cuts deeper than all the others combined. Marcus didn't sleep that night. He sat in his downtown Atlanta penthouse, the real one, not the property Jerome had commandeered, watching the city lights blur into streams of gold and white against the darkness. The penthouse was exactly as he'd left it 6 months ago, untouched and waiting, a 4,000-square-foot reminder of everything he'd built from nothing. His phone hadn't stopped buzzing since he'd left the estate. Texts from David went from apologetic to angry to desperate. Vanessa's messages evolved from explanations to pleas to thinly veiled threats about what she'd tell the media. Eleanor left 7 voicemails, each one a masterclass in manipulation. First playing concerned mother, then the victim, then finally the angry matriarch demanding he call her back immediately. Jerome sent a single text that just said, "We family," though, with a prayer hands emoji, as if that somehow absolved 6 months of theft and disrespect. Marcus ignored them all. At 3 a.m., his phone rang with a number he didn't recognize, and something made him answer it. Mr. Harrison. The voice was elderly, shaky, but familiar. This is James Cooper. I hope I'm not calling too late. James, his father's best friend, the man who'd taught Marcus about business ethics and integrity, who'd been on the board since day one. It's never too late for you, James, Marcus said, surprised by how much he meant it. There was a long pause before James spoke again, and Marcus could hear the weight of guilt in every word. I owe you an apology. Son, I sat in that meeting last week, and I listened to your brother talk about making his position permanent, and I said nothing. I voted yes when Vanessa proposed restricting your access to company decisions. I stayed silent when I should have stood up for you. His voice cracked slightly. Your father would be ashamed of me, and honestly, I'm ashamed of myself. Marcus walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows, phone pressed to his ear, and stared out at the city his company had helped build. Harrison Digital Solutions had created thousands of jobs in Atlanta, had invested in the community, had made a difference. "Why didn't you speak up?" he asked, not accusatory, just genuinely curious. James sighed heavily. "Because I'm a coward. Because David and Vanessa painted such a convincing picture of you being unstable, of you abandoning the company, of you being a liability. And I'm old, Marcus. I'm 73 years old, and I was tired of fighting. It was easier to go along, to trust that maybe they were right." He paused again. "But then I went home and I couldn't sleep, and I kept thinking about the young man who used to come to my office with ideas scribbled on napkins, who built something extraordinary through hard work and vision. And I realized I betrayed him." Marcus felt something shift in his chest, a small crack in the wall of anger he'd built around himself. "What made you call tonight, James?" The old man's voice strengthened slightly. "Because I got the notice about tomorrow's emergency board meeting, and I know what's coming. I know you're about to burn everything down, and I need you to know that I'm on your side. Whatever you need from me tomorrow, testimony, evidence, my resignation, it's yours. I should have protected your legacy, and I didn't. Let me make it right." Marcus closed his eyes, feeling the sting of unexpected emotion. In a day full of betrayal and cruelty, here was one person choosing integrity over comfort. "I need you to do something for me," Marcus said quietly. "I need you to tell the truth tomorrow. Not for me, but because it's right. Can you do that?" James's response was immediate. "I can and I will. I've already prepared a statement about everything I witnessed over the past 6 months. The financial irregularities, the self-dealing, the attempts to undermine your authority. It's all documented." They talked for another 20 minutes, James filling in gaps that even Patricia's investigators hadn't found, providing context and confirmation for Marcus's worst suspicions. By the time they hung up, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in months. Hope. Not for reconciliation with his family. That ship had sailed and sunk, but hope that maybe not everyone was corrupted by greed and opportunity. The sun rose slowly over Atlanta, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that reminded Marcus of why he'd chosen this city for his headquarters. He showered, dressed in his best suit, a midnight blue Bryony that had cost $15,000, and selected a tie his father had given him before he died. "Wear this when you need to remember who you are," his father had said, pressing the silk into Marcus's hands during his final hospital stay. Today, Marcus needed that reminder more than ever. Patricia arrived at 7 a.m. with 2 associates and enough legal documents to bury his family in consequences. "Everyone confirmed for the meeting," she said, setting her briefcase on his dining table and pulling out her tablet. "All 12 board members, David, Vanessa, and I took the liberty of inviting your mother and Jerome as well. They don't have official standing, but I thought you might want them to witness this." Marcus nodded. He wanted them all there. He wanted them to see what happened when you mistook his kindness for weakness, when you assumed his quiet nature meant he was stupid or blind. The meeting was scheduled for 9, but Marcus planned to arrive at 8:30, early enough to watch them squirm, late enough to make them sweat. The Harrison Digital Solutions headquarters was a gleaming tower of glass and steel in midtown Atlanta, 32 floors of innovation and technology that Marcus had designed himself. He'd wanted a building that inspired creativity, that made employees feel valued, that represented the future he was trying to build. As his car pulled up to the entrance, Marcus saw news vans parked along the street, cameras set up, reporters checking their equipment. Patricia noticed his expression and allowed herself a small smile. "I may have leaked to a few trusted journalists that there would be a major announcement this morning regarding Harrison Digital Solutions leadership. They don't know specifics, but they know it's big." Marcus stepped out of the car, and immediately the cameras turned toward him, flashes popping, reporters shouting questions. "Mr. Harrison, is it true you've been missing for 6 months?" "Marcus, are the rumors about company fraud true?" "Mr. Harrison, what can you tell us about your relationship with your brother?" Marcus ignored them all, walking through the lobby with Patricia and her team flanking him like a military escort. Employees stopped and stared, some with shock, others with relief, a few with what looked like genuine happiness. He realized that not everyone had betrayed him, that there were still people who believed in him, who'd been waiting for him to come back. The executive elevator rose smoothly to the 32nd floor where the boardroom occupied the entire northeast corner with views of downtown Atlanta that had cost a fortune to secure. Marcus stepped out and saw them all waiting. His family, the board members, all gathered in the glass-walled conference room like specimens in a cage. David saw him first and the color drained from his face. Vanessa's hand flew to her mouth. Eleanor actually stood up from her chair, her carefully applied makeup not quite hiding the fear in her eyes. And Marcus smiled, because the real show was about to begin, and by the time he was done, they'd all understand exactly who Marcus Harrison was and what happened when you tried to take everything from him. The boardroom showdown is here, and Marcus is about to reveal evidence that will destroy them all. Don't miss next chapter where secrets explode and one person makes a choice that changes everything. Subscribe now and hit that notification bell. Marcus walked into the boardroom at exactly 8:45 a.m., and the silence that fell was absolute, the kind of quiet that comes right before an explosion. He didn't say good morning, didn't acknowledge the shocked faces or the way David had gone completely pale or how Vanessa's hands were shaking as she gripped the edge of the conference table. He simply walked to the head of the table, his seat, the one David had been occupying for 6 months, and stood there waiting until his brother scrambled out of the chair like it had burned him. Eleanor sat 3 seats down, her designer sunglasses doing nothing to hide the puffiness around her eyes from a sleepless night, her usual confidence replaced with something that looked like panic. Jerome had positioned himself near the door like he was already planning his escape route, his expensive sneakers tapping nervously against the marble floor. The board members occupied the remaining seats, their expressions ranging from confusion to curiosity to outright concern. Patricia took a position beside Marcus, placing her tablet and a stack of folders on the table with a deliberate thud that made several people flinch. If you've been waiting to see justice served, this is it. Hit that like button and comment below what you think Marcus should do to his family, because what happens in the next few minutes will have you on the edge of your seat. Marcus let the silence stretch for a full 30 seconds, watching them squirm. Watching David try to make eye contact with Vanessa, who was determinedly staring at her hands. Watching his mother attempt to look dignified while clearly terrified about what was coming. Finally, he spoke, his voice calm and controlled, every word measured and deliberate. 6 months ago, I left this company in the hands of people I trusted. I told myself I was being paranoid, that my family loved me, that my fiancé was loyal, that the people I'd elevated and supported and given everything to would protect what we'd built together. He paused, looking directly at David. I was wrong about all of it. David started to speak, half rising from his chair. Marcus, man, just let me explain. But Marcus held up one hand, and his brother stopped mid-sentence, sitting back down like a scolded child. You'll get your chance to talk, David. But first, you're all going to listen. Patricia pressed a button on her tablet, and the large screen on the wall behind Marcus came to life, displaying a spreadsheet with highlighted transactions in red. This is a summary of an authorized financial activity over the past 6 months. $3.7 million transferred from company accounts to personal accounts, investment funds, and third-party ventures. All of it illegal. All of it traceable. The board members leaned forward, studying the screen with increasing alarm. Sandra Williams, who'd been so enthusiastic about David's leadership, now looked like she might be sick. Paul Hendricks was shaking his head slowly, his lips pressed into a thin line of disapproval. James Cooper sat perfectly still, his eyes sad but unsurprised, already knowing what was coming because he'd helped compile some of this evidence. Marcus continued, his voice never rising, never showing the anger that burned in his chest. David, you gave yourself 3 unauthorized bonuses totaling $300,000. You purchased a Lamborghini with company funds and listed it as a business expense for client transportation. You leased a corporate apartment that was never used for business purposes. He shifted his gaze to Vanessa, who'd gone completely white. Vanessa, you transferred proprietary code to NextGen Solutions, a startup you created using my company's resources and intellectual property. You pitched our unreleased software to investors as your own innovation. You violated your non-compete clause, your confidentiality agreement, and your fiduciary duty as CFO. Vanessa's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Patricia clicked to the next screen, showing email chains with timestamps and recipients clearly visible. These emails show coordination between David and Vanessa to gradually remove Marcus from operational control, to paint him as mentally unstable, and to position David as a rightful leader of Harrison Digital Solutions. Marcus moved on to his mother before anyone could interrupt. Eleanor Harrison attempted to have me declared legally incompetent and filed for conservatorship of my assets while I was away. She spent over $200,000 of my money in 6 months on shopping trips, spa treatments, and luxury vacations while telling friends and family that she was worried sick about my well-being. Eleanor finally spoke, her voice cracking with desperation. "Baby, I was worried about you. I didn't know where you were, if you were safe, if you were eating. I thought if I could control the money, I could protect you." Marcus cut her off with a look so cold that she physically recoiled. "You thought you could protect me by declaring me incompetent? By working with a psychiatrist you've been seeing to build a case against my mental health? By telling the court that I was a danger to myself and others?" He pulled out a document and slid it across the table toward her. "This is your petition for conservatorship. You want to read it out loud, or should I?" Eleanor grabbed the paper with shaking hands, tears now streaming down her face, ruining her expensive makeup. "I was scared. You just disappeared and I thought something terrible had happened, and I panicked." But Marcus wasn't done. He turned to Jerome, who'd been trying to make himself invisible in the corner. "Jerome, you've been running an illegal gambling operation out of my penthouse, using my address and my reputation to attract high-stakes players. You've lost $2.3 million, my money, covering debts of people who would normally break your legs for that kind of default." Jerome's face went from brown to gray. "'Cause I was gonna pay you back. I swear, I just hit a bad streak, but I got something big coming up." Marcus ignored him and addressed the entire room. "Every single person in my family took from me. They stole my money, my company, my property, my trust. They did it systematically, deliberately, and without remorse. And when I came back yesterday, dressed as a homeless man to see if anyone would choose me over my money, they laughed at me, called me crazy, called security. My own mother said, 'You people,' like I was garbage on her shoe." The silence that followed was crushing. Several board members were staring at Eleanor with disgust. Sandra Williams had tears in her eyes, though Marcus couldn't tell if they were from shame or sympathy. James Cooper just looked tired and sad, like he was watching a family destroy itself in real time. Patricia pulled out another set of documents. "We have 2 options moving forward," she announced, her voice crisp and professional. "Option 1. Criminal charges are filed against David Harrison, Vanessa Mitchell, and Jerome Harrison for embezzlement, fraud, and theft. Eleanor Harrison faces charges for attempted financial exploitation. All of them are removed from any association with Harrison Digital Solutions, and Marcus pursues maximum penalties under the law." The room erupted. David jumped to his feet. "You can't do this. I'm your brother." Vanessa was crying openly now. "Marcus, please, I made mistakes, but I still love you." Eleanor reached toward him across the table. "Baby, please, I'm your mother." But Marcus just stood there, unmoved, waiting for them to finish. When they finally quieted down, Patricia continued. "Option 2, you all signed these agreements." She distributed folders to each family member. "You return every penny you stole. You resign from any positions within the company. You agree to never contact Marcus again unless he initiates it, and you walk away with your freedom intact. You have 30 seconds to decide." And in that moment, watching them frantically flip through the agreements, Marcus saw exactly what he'd expected to see. Not remorse, not genuine apology, but people calculating what they could salvage from the wreckage of their greed. Will Marcus show mercy, or will he destroy them completely? Final chapter brings a shocking conclusion that will leave you speechless. Subscribe and turn on notifications because you won't believe how this ends. David was the first to sign, his hand shaking so badly he could barely hold a pen, his signature a jagged scroll across the bottom of the agreement that ended his time at Harrison Digital Solutions forever. He didn't look at Marcus, Couldn't meet his eyes, just pushed the folder back across the table and slumped in his chair like a puppet with cut strings. Vanessa was next, tears streaming down her face, mascara running in black rivers that stained her white blouse, but she signed anyway because prison terrified her more than losing Marcus ever could. Jerome didn't even read the document, just grabbed the pen and scribbled his name, already planning his next move, his next scheme, already thinking about how to survive without the cushion of Marcus's money. Eleanor was the only one who hesitated. The folder open in front of her, her manicured finger tracing the words that would sever her legal right to ever claim her son's fortune. "Marcus," she whispered, her voice breaking, "I'm your mother. I carried you for 9 months. I raised you. Doesn't that mean anything?" And Marcus looked at her, really looked at her, seeing not the woman who'd raised him, but the woman who'd tried to have him declared incompetent so she could control his billions, and he felt nothing but a vast, echoing emptiness where love used to live. "Sign it, Mom," he said quietly, and something in his tone made her pick up the pen. The moment Eleanor's signature hit the paper, Patricia collected all 4 folders and handed them to her associate, who immediately left the room to file them with the court. It was done, legally binding, irrevocable. Marcus turned to the board members who'd been watching this family implosion with varying degrees of shock and discomfort. "I'm resuming my position as CEO of Harrison Digital Solutions, effective immediately. David Harrison is terminated for cause. Vanessa Mitchell is terminated for cause, and we'll be pursuing separate legal action for the intellectual property theft. I want a full audit of every department, every account, every decision made in my absence." He paused, his eyes moving from face to face. "I also want the resignation of every board member who voted to make David's position permanent, or who supported restricting my operational control." Sandra Williams stood up immediately, her face flushed with shame. "Marcus, I should have asked more questions. I should have demanded proof. I'm sorry." She placed her board credentials on the table and walked out without another word. 2 other board members followed her lead, men who'd been swayed by David's charisma and Vanessa's manipulated financial reports, men who chose to lead with dignity rather than be removed in disgrace. That left 9 board members, including James Cooper, who sat quietly, waiting to see if Marcus would demand his resignation too. Marcus walked around the table slowly, his hands in his pockets, his expression unreadable. When he reached James, he stopped. "You voted yes on making David permanent," Marcus said, and it wasn't a question. James nodded, meeting Marcus's eyes with difficulty. "I did, and I was wrong. I let fear and exhaustion cloud my judgment. I betrayed your trust in your father's memory." He stood up slowly, his 73-year-old knees creaking, and placed his own credentials on the table. "I don't deserve to be on this board anymore." Marcus picked up the credentials and held them for a long moment before handing them back. "My father used to say that a man who admits his mistakes is worth 10 men who pretend they are perfect. You called me last night. You told me the truth. You helped Patricia gather evidence even though it implicated you." He placed the credentials in Jamesy's hand and closed the old man's fingers around them. "I need people I can trust on this board, James. I need people who'll tell me the truth even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Will you do that?" James's eyes filled with tears and he nodded, unable to speak. Marcus returned to the head of the table, aware that his family was still sitting there, still present for this restoration of order, forced to watch him reclaim everything they'd tried to steal. He looked at David, at the brother he protected and elevated and trusted. "You know what the worst part is? It's not the money. I can make more money. It's not even the betrayal, though that cuts deep. It's that you were good at running the company." David's head snapped up, surprise and confusion crossing his face. Marcus continued, his voice steady. "The numbers don't lie. You increased productivity, secured 3 major contracts, and the employee satisfaction scores went up under your leadership. You could have been an amazing CEO someday. You could have earned this position legitimately, but you were too impatient, too greedy, too willing to take shortcuts." He shook his head slowly. "You didn't just betray me, David. You betrayed yourself." David's face crumpled, and for the first time since this all began, Marcus saw something that might have been genuine remorse. "I'm sorry," David whispered. "I'm so sorry, Marcus. I thought if I proved I could do it, if I showed everyone I was just as good as you, then maybe Dad would finally be proud of me too." And there it was, the truth beneath the greed, the insecurity that had poisoned everything. Their father had died 5 years ago, suddenly, before David had accomplished anything significant, before he'd built anything of his own. Marcus had been the successful one, the brilliant one, the son their father bragged about. David had been the younger brother, always in Marcus's shadow, always trying to prove himself. Marcus felt a flicker of something, not forgiveness exactly, but understanding. "Dad was proud of you," he said quietly. "He told me so before he died. He said you had potential, that you just needed time to find your path." David was crying openly now, his shoulders shaking. Then why didn't he ever tell me that? Marcus didn't have an answer for that. Their father had been a complicated man, generous but emotionally distant, proud but not expressive. Maybe he'd assumed David knew. Maybe he'd planned to say it later and ran out of time. It didn't matter now. What mattered was that David had let that insecurity turn into resentment, had let resentment turn into betrayal, and now they were here on opposite sides of an unbridgeable gap. Marcus turned to Vanessa, who'd been silenced in signing the agreement, her face buried in her hands. "Did you ever love me?" he asked, and he genuinely wanted to know. She looked up, her eyes red and swollen. "I did," she said, her voice hoarse. "I do. But I also love the life you gave me, the access, the power, the feeling of being important. And when you left, when you just disappeared without explaining, I felt abandoned and angry, and David was there and he understood what it was like to live in your shadow." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I know it's not an excuse. I know I destroyed everything. But I need you to know it wasn't fake from the beginning. It became something else." Marcus nodded slowly, accepting her truth even though it didn't change anything. He looked at his mother last, at Eleanor, who'd stopped crying and was now just staring at him with a mixture of fear and something that might have been realization. "I didn't know you were testing us," she said finally. "If I'd known it was you at the door—" Marcus cut her off. "That's exactly the point, Mom. If you'd known it was me, you would have acted differently. You would have been kind because I had money, not because it was the right thing to do. You would have welcomed me because I was your son, the billionaire, not because I was your son who needed help." Eleanor flinched like he'd slapped her. "That's not fair. You're twisting it." But Marcus was done. He turned to Patricia. "Make sure the agreements are filed. Make sure every penny is tracked and returned. I want monthly reports on compliance." Patricia nodded crisply. Marcus addressed his family one final time. "You have 48 hours to remove your belongings from any property I own. After that, the locks will be changed and anything left behind will be donated. You are not welcome at this building, my home, or any Harrison Digital Solutions event. If you violate these terms, the criminal charges move forward immediately." He straightened his tie, his father's tie, and looked at each of them in turn. "We're done here." David stood slowly, looking like he wanted to say something more, but Jerome grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the door. Vanessa followed, her heels clicking against the marble, her shoulders hunched like she was walking through a storm. Eleanor was the last to leave, pausing at the door to look back at Marcus one more time. "I do love you," she said softly. "I know you don't believe that anymore, but I do." Marcus said nothing, just waited until she left and the door clicked shut behind her. The remaining board members sat in silence until James spoke. "What now?" Marcus walked to the windows, looking out at Atlanta, at the city where he'd built his empire, where he'd learned that success couldn't protect you from betrayal, but it could give you the power to survive it. "Now we rebuild. We make this company stronger. We remember that loyalty and integrity matter more than profit margins. And we make sure that everyone who works here knows they are valued for who they are, not what they can provide." He turned back to the board, his expression resolved and clear. We start over. The right way. 6 months later, Harrison Digital Solutions announced record profits and the opening of 3 new international offices. Marcus created a foundation in his father's name that provided business mentorship and startup capital for young entrepreneurs from underserved communities. He never spoke to David, Vanessa, Eleanor, or Jerome again, though he heard through various sources that David had taken a middle management position at a small tech firm in California, that Vanessa's startup had failed after investors discovered the stolen IP, that Eleanor had moved to Florida and was living in a modest condo on what remained of her savings, and that Jerome had finally gotten help for his gambling addiction. Marcus dated occasionally but carefully, building trust slowly, learning to recognize genuine connection from opportunistic interest. And sometimes, late at night in his penthouse, he'd think about that moment on the doorstep when his family had laughed at him, had called him crazy, had chosen money over love. It still hurt. It probably always would. But it had also freed him, had shown him who people really were when they thought there was nothing to lose and everything to gain. And in the end, Marcus realized that the test hadn't just revealed their true nature. It had revealed his own strength, his capacity to survive betrayal, and his ability to build something meaningful from the ashes of broken trust. That was worth more than any fortune. What an incredible journey. If this story touched your heart, smash that like button and subscribe for more emotional stories about family, betrayal, and redemption. Drop a comment below telling us what you would have done in Marcus's situation. Would you have shown mercy or made them pay? Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message about knowing your worth and never letting anyone take advantage of your kindness. Thanks for watching, and remember, your value isn't determined by how people treat you when you have everything, but by how you respond when they think you have nothing. See you in the next story.